start the recording here, so you should see my screen right now. And I do want to note that throughout this webinar, if you keep typing questions into that questions pane right there, we have some people on the line, experts on the line, our Senior Applications Engineer, Sam Elsner, as well as Applications Engineer Kylie Corrigan, who will be answering your questions as we go through the webinar. So that's great. Myself, I'm Joanne Bacharach. I'll be hosting the webinar, going through the content right now. And before we begin, just want to plug first thing, our training program, which if you are interested in learning out more about that, you can go to our LinkedIn page. We have a LinkedIn training page. We have a registration page. You can go find out more about training through our website. And then also I want to plug our YouTube page. This video will be recorded. It will be posted on our YouTube page when it's finished, and as well as sent out in an email. The link will be sent out to you after this webinar is over, along with a PDF of all the slides. So our YouTube page not only will have this webinar, but has a lot of great content on it from previous webinars that we've done, as well as videos and tutorials and guides. So a really good resource for you if this is your first time joining something like this and you're interested in more info. Okay. If you have any questions before we begin, please you can type them in, and if you're having problems with technology or anything, our people in the background here will help you get connected. All right, so this webinar is going to give a high-level overview of the new features and products in KEPServerEX version 5.17, which was released a couple days ago. And this version includes several enhancements to existing functionality, as well as a new plugin. We call it our Scheduler plugin. So some of those enhancements I'm not going to go over in great detail, but we included some more robust security for the DNP3 Master Ethernet driver, as well as just some incremental updates for our Allen Bradley ControlLogix Ethernet driver, which now supports ControlLogix firmware 23 and 24. Another enhancement or improvement was to our Allen Bradley Ethernet driver. There's a new model called the Soft PLC, which is an extension of the earlier PLC5 model. And it actually extends the address range for the PLC5 model previously supported in this driver. So PLC5 supported 1 to 999 as an address range, and we add an extra digit up there going up to 9999 for the Soft PLC. Soft PLC is a controllers manufacturer that has extended the life of the PLC5 Allen Bradley Ethernet protocol. Originally, this protocol was used to communicate with the PLC5s and the SLC5s. Allen Bradley Rockwell Automation no longer sells these devices, so Soft PLC came in and offers some powerful and flexible options to help extend the life of these models. So if you have kind of legacy devices in the PLC5, SLC5 families, you can take those and directly roll them over to the Soft PLCs. They are interchangeable. And they even have, migration packets, in my understanding, that you can use to migrate any PLC5 projects you have over to Soft PLC. So Soft PLC also offers some packs and programmable automation controllers, some protocol converter gateways, SCADA software, and PC-based HMIs. You can find out more on their website. Soft PLC does recommend KEPServerEX to facilitate device communications to their SCADA and HMI software. And the hardware model supported for our Soft PLC model in the Allen Bradley Ethernet driver is Microsoft PLC Smart and Hardbook. So that's a great partnership that we have with Soft PLC, and we're really excited to release this extended support for the Allen Bradley Ethernet driver, because we know a lot of you use those models. Okay, so some of the more significant features in this release include a new scheduler plugin. So that's really big, and I'll definitely explain more about that in a moment. We have also FLOWCAL transaction queue support for AFM Exporter plugin. That might not mean much to a lot of you who aren't in kind of the EFM or oil and gas industry, but we will we'll explain a little bit about that and get into that in this presentation. and then enhance aggregate support for our local historian plugin. So we're briefly going to explore each of these updates. We're going to spend the majority of time on our scheduler plugin since that's really fresh new functionality that we've added that is quite different from what you might be used to in KEPServerEX. So I do have a poll question I'd like to give you before we get started, and I usually like to get a heartbeat on what your experience level is with KEPServerEX in these webinars, just so I can tailor some of the content to whoever is on the call. So go ahead, 1 to 5. 5 is an expert, 1 is a beginner, no experience whatsoever. Leave that open for a few seconds. So how much experience do you have with KEPServerEX? Rate your experience from 1 to 5, with 1 being no experience and 5 being an expert. So go ahead and vote if you have not yet. All right, thank you for voting. I'll go ahead and close that now, and I'll share the results. Looks like we have a pretty good spread. We have quite a few people around the beginner level, but then some people that put themselves right in the middle, so that's good to see. So for the beginners, I'll spend a little bit of time explaining some of KEPServerEX, just introductory level, when we go through the demo, so you're not too lost. Great. And there will be some more poll questions throughout this webinar. Love the poll questions just to get a heartbeat on what your specific experience is and also what your interests are. So very great. Thank you for participating. All right, so scheduler plugin. Now, to kind of frame this issue, I'm just going to talk about the motivations behind and the business case behind why we developed this plugin. And really what it has to do with is reliable data gathering. Reliable data gathering is really that ongoing issue, especially for industries where you have telemetry communications. You have these remote communications. Maybe you're going over SAT-Link or VSAT to hundreds or thousands of devices and spread over a large geographic region. And these networks typically have limited bandwidth. So industries that this affects include oil and gas, water, wastewater, and power, but there's certainly other industries that this affects. It's a common challenge. So the challenge is collecting the required amount of data that you need at the frequency that meets the needs of business and control applications, which might be SCADA screens, alarm applications, maybe you have flow analysis or accounting software, you might have operational analytics, and so forth. So you need all this data from the field, but you don't want to be stretching your bandwidth, or you don't want to be overburdening your network. And if you have these multiple client applications, so in the upper left of this graphic here, multiple client applications, and they're all requesting data independently, maybe your network is getting overburdened. And that's due to the fact that the server is responsible for servicing each client request on demand, and potentially at kind of high pull rates or high request rates. So every application is requesting data on the order of seconds. Imagine a SCADA system, a corporate historian, or other analysis software. They're all trying to read hundreds or thousands of data points over this remote connection at a 1-second rate. That might be a lot of unnecessary burden for your network, especially if the applications don't need data at that high of a frequency, or if the data isn't changing, or if the request is redundant, if every application needs the same data point, that sort of thing. So now, to add complexity to the situation, if it's already not enough of a headache, perhaps you have a SCADA application that gets changed, an operator comes in and changes it, maybe they don't realize what they're doing, or something happens, maybe if it's even, it could be a mistake, maybe it's even consciously done, and that application comes in and says, I'm just going to request everything and kind of hog the network resource, and in effect what it's going to do is starve all the other applications' data needs. It's even possible that maybe this is a malicious or rogue application that's doing this to purposefully cripple a network with these overbearing requests where it's saying, I'm just going to hog all the communication so that nobody else gets a chance to talk. And that could potentially deny other critical applications from getting data and definitely put the company's operations at risk. So the idea for the scheduler is that intelligently scheduling data requests in one source so that you can balance network load and override these rogue applications that are potentially out there could help alleviate these problems. And thus, over the past 12 months and at the request, we've had many requests and actually tons of feedback, so thank you from our end users on this. We conducted significant market research to identify useful features, what you guys wanted included in this feature set, functionality set, and pain points of these schedule-ready data acquisition systems. So as a solution, we developed the scheduler plugin for KEPServerEX, and what it allows is intelligent scheduling of data requests in one central location, which would be the server. Users that are responsible for the network, maybe doing that balancing and servicing of data distribution across the enterprise, you can use the server now for centralized scheduling to define when to poll devices. You might have a specific time of day or an hour or a specific frequency that you want to do that's maybe not 1 second, maybe it's only every 30 minutes, right? So now you can do that with the scheduler. And you can define what specific data sets to poll as opposed to the entire tag set or entire item reference set that's defined per device. You can also set priorities for multiple schedules to allow critical data through over non-critical information in case there's an overlap of requests and your network can't handle both at the same time. So when using the scheduler plugin, clients that may be rogue or malicious, they don't have control over the data updates via scan rates. Instead, KEPServerEX is going to control the polling and update each client as data is available, thus allowing a lot better intelligent control of those valuable network resources. So some of the scheduler features here, really feature-rich to meet the requirements of our users. We have those priority designations for different schedules. You do have the ability to give the device highest priority on the fly if you need to pop a device up to higher priority. We have something called fast pull or fast scan designation, which allows you to temporarily take a device and pull it faster if you need to do that for maintenance or something like that. System tags, new set of system tags to give you insight into the performance of your schedules and the system. And then an ability to do multi-device and tag properties edit per schedule, as well as doing a mass edit of with the CSV import and export, which those of you on the call who are familiar with KEPServerEX probably will have some of the same look and feel and features as some of our other plugins that you've worked with. Okay, so I think we've done a good job here of building the backstory of the scheduler. Before I move on to the demo, I'm going to do, of course, another poll question. And I want to know, are you currently using, are you currently controlling the polling of your devices today? Are you actually using a scheduler? So I'll launch this poll. So how are you controlling the polling of your devices today? Are you doing it with another vendor scheduling or polling engine? There's definitely competitors out there. Are you using one of their solutions? Are you just doing it the traditional kind of OPCDA real time with a SCADA or HMI? Using something else, maybe your own custom solution that you've come up with, or not at all doing it, but interested in perhaps using this functionality, or none of the above. So go ahead and answer that if you wouldn't mind. And if you hear typing in the background, that is Sam and Kylie furiously answering your questions. We're getting a lot of good questions coming through the line, so that's really great. Thanks for all of those. And I guess while this poll is going, I can maybe answer some of them for the greater group. So someone asked a good question: is the scheduler specific to a driver? And the answer is no. The scheduler will, just like any of our plugins, can be used with any driver in KEPServerEX. So you could use an Allen Bradley driver, you could use a Siemens driver, you could use the Yokogawa, BACnet, whatever you need to schedule, you can do that. through the scheduler plugin. All right, so I'll close that poll. Looks like a lot of you have answered, so thank you for participating. And it looks like this is kind of what I expect because a lot of you do real-time communication. So 50% with a SCADA or HMI solution, you're doing kind of more traditional real-time data polling. But it does look like a pretty good spread. You know, over 20% of people who are interested in doing it, or some other people that are currently doing, about 30% of people currently doing it, but doing it using another solution or another vendor. So really good to see those responses. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's move on to the demo portion. I have KEPServerEX here preloaded with a project that I have going. I have some simulation tags here. I'm using our simulator device driver. This is a driver that comes with the server. If you don't install anything, if you just click next through the entire install, you'll only install what we call our simulator driver, which is just something that allows you to basically create functions on the server level. So here I have some ramp tags, some random tags, some signs, and you can see that they're generating data for me that's going to kind of, since I don't have a PLC connected currently, that's going to act like my data coming through, like my real-time data coming through. So I have this simulation examples function, and then in my channel 1 here, that's also a simulator driver that I'm using, and I just have a couple simple tags defined that I'm going to read as well. And the other channels here are basically just to, first of all, showcase some of the functionality we already talked about, like the soft PLC model that supports that extended address range over the PLC5, as well as just show you that you can actually have lots of things configured in the server in parallel. So I have my Allen Bradley driver, I have a Fisher Rock driver here that I'm using to collect maybe some historical data, and then I have my simulated channels, and they're all working together, working at the same time. Okay, so now I'm going to open something called our Quick Client. Now this is separate from KEPServerEX. It's a separate tool we include with the software, but it's a separate piece that is an OPC DA client. It's a real-time client. And when I say client, what I mean is, you know, something like an HMI or SCADA system that's going to connect to the server and request data from the server. The client, and just again, this is for those of you who are beginners on the call, client, you know, server's not going to go out and start communicating or get any data until a client connects. So the client, in a typical OPC DA client-server relationship, the client drives the communication. And the traditional relationship is KEPServerEX is going to wait for the client to connect. The client's going to say, hey, here's the items that I want, and here's how fast I want them. So you can see here that I'm getting these at a 1-second rate. You see the time set changing every 1 second. And that's because if I go into properties here, I can see that my update rate is set to 1,000 milliseconds or 1 second. So right now, even though these groups here say schedule 10 seconds and schedule 1 minute, I'm actually pulling at a 1-second rate because my client is saying, hey, I want this data at a 1-second rate, and I'm not currently scheduling anything. I don't have the scheduler set up yet, so I can't basically take over that communication and say, you know what, client, I'm going to override you and instead pull at maybe a slower rate, because as the server, I want to be able to centralize the control of polling instead of letting you dictate to me what you're going to do. So right now, even though this says schedule 1 minute, we're actually just because we're an OPC DA server and we're following that real-time model, we're responding to the request of the client and giving the client data every 1 second because that's what the client is requesting, that 1-second rate. And we have no control over that if we're just using the server without the scheduler plugin, right? We have these tags configured. Once a client connects and says, this is what I want, we service that request and we try to get that data to the client, which is what you would expect and what you would want in most cases. Okay, so to show you this new functionality, then I'm going to get into the scheduler plugin. And again, for those of you who are new, this is our configuration window. Typically, the first view you would see when you open, you know, KEPServerEX configuration is this channels and devices view, which is basically where you configure how you connect to devices, what we call a driver, what driver you're going to use to connect, what protocol you're going to use, what NIC, or whether you're using a serial port and that sort of thing. So you configure those connections here. But then if you see this drop-down menu up here, you won't see it if you don't have any plugins installed. But if you do have plugins installed, you'll see this drop-down menu here. This is how you get into our plugins. And you see we have quite a few. And we do have plenty of webinars and videos about these other plugins. So I'm going to go to the scheduler. And that brings me to a different view in my configuration where I'm going to configure how I'm going to schedule some items and basically override my client settings. Okay. Let's make sure there's no questions pertaining to the demo. So it looks like everybody's pretty good, getting some good answers there. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is just quickly create a schedule. I'm not going to explain everything. And I'm going to quickly create a schedule. Just click to add a schedule there. And I'm going to create a schedule that is just 1 minute. So 1 minute synchronized to midnight. And that's how often I'm going to pull for data. And you can see fairly easy to create there, and then I'm going to go ahead and browse for some tags to add to my schedule. And again, not going to explain all the options here, just going to do it quickly to show you how straightforward it is. And I can right-click and do Add All Tags Beneath Selection in this browse window here. So pretty easy. First thing to note here that you can see I tried to add some system tags, and those system tags couldn't be added. The reason is the scheduler plugin does not currently support the scheduling of system tags, so only the data item references for the actual data in those devices. So you can see I added all the data tags from my simulation device and not the system tags. And then here in my event log, I can see that my recurrence for Schedule 1 has been scheduled for 11:23, so it's 11:22 right now. So on the minute, the next minute, 11:23 is when that data pull will hit. Now if we go back into the quick client, we can see this in effect. So you see before the data here was changing every 1 second because again, we look in the properties here and we see that the update rate was set to 1 second. But now what's happened is my scheduler plugin has come in and said, you know what, you're only going to get data updates every 1 minute because these tags are scheduled. And so now you can see that I'm going to have to wait for the next minute to hit before I get another data update. So it's 11:23 timestamp right now. The next time I see a data update will be 11:24 and so on. So, that was pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You can see in my 10-second schedule group here, I'm still getting data every 1 second because I have yet to schedule these channel 1 device 1 tags. I've only scheduled the simulation example tags, not these tags yet. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to go ahead and create a new schedule by clicking the little toolbar button up here. And I'm going to call this my schedule 10 seconds. And note that my schedule has priority 2 because this is the second schedule I've made. Every schedule gets a priority, and so any new schedules are going to automatically be assigned the lowest priority. And the priority setting is used to determine the order of schedules pulled if multiple schedules are triggered at the same time. So when that 1 minute interval hits, my 10-second is probably going to try to go at the same time as my 1 minute, but the 1 minute will get priority. Maybe that's because it's more critical data. Then the next setting I see is this real-time override in seconds. You can see, this is sometimes referred to as fast scan or fast poll, and it specifies an override poll interval in seconds. The default poll override setting is going to be 600 seconds. That's equivalent to 10 minutes. I can set this to whatever I want. Maybe I want to do 2 seconds. And I'll show you how this override works. What it's used for is an interval that's used anytime a device is put into this fast scan mode and that poll schedule needs to be overridden. So if I want to override that 10-second schedule, maybe because the device needs to be maintenance, I need data quicker to troubleshoot a scenario or something like that, I would use this fast scan setting. Okay, so now for the meat of the scheduling functionality, and that's this little recurrences box here. And that's how I'm going to define when I want to pull my devices. So for a particular group of devices, you might want to collect data 15 minutes past the hour, every hour. or maybe you just want to do 3 times a day. What you're going to choose is going to depend on a combination of your business needs and what your applications need and your network limitations. So this recurrences list box contains all the repeating events currently configured. You can have multiple things, multiple recurrence patterns in this list. And that might be a pattern that you have. It could be a specific time of day. It could be an interval in hours, minutes, or seconds, and you can synchronize that to a specific time of day so that the clock always gets resynced. So for example, maybe I only want to do a poll at 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. every day, and that's really the only time I need data, right? I don't need data every second. I just need it twice a day because that's what's relevant to my business. For this, obviously, I'm going to do an interval of 10 seconds for my recurrence pattern for this, and I'm only going to have one setting in there. So all schedules must have at least one recurrence. The default recurrence polls once per hour, synchronized to midnight, and use these buttons to add, remove, edit, and it's pretty straightforward. Just as important as when to poll is when not to poll. So a scheduler has to allow users to define what we call exceptions, which is what you see on the right-hand side here. Maybe you don't need to collect data on holidays, or there's like a maintenance window, or just, you know, a time when production's not running every day, and you just don't want to be using the network resources to pull for information. So an exception is a period of time where scheduled polls cannot occur, and you can configure them here. So maybe, you know, I want to configure, and let's say a period, and I want to say, you know, every day from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. I don't want to poll. Or maybe I want to add in exceptions for the weekend, and just say, you know, I don't Saturday and Sunday, no one's around, I don't need data. So that's exceptions, and like you can see, you can have multiple exceptions configured here. And then finally, we see this enabled checkbox that lets me know that the schedule indeed is going to take effect and be enabled. I do have the option of enabling and disabling schedules with these little stop and start buttons here. So if I stop this schedule, which is my schedule 1 minute, need to label that correctly there. If I stop that and I go back to my quick client, I see I would go back to that 1 second poll. Should go back. Okay. So I got my schedule 10 seconds, my schedule 1 minute. Remember, my 10 seconds has priority 2. If I wanted to change its priority setting, I could use these green buttons on the middle bar here to do that. I could pop it up to the first place or bring it down. I'm going to go ahead and leave it at the priority 2 spot here. All right, so the next thing I want to do to my schedule of 10 seconds is add the tags that I want. So I did do this quickly for the first part of the demo, but I'll do a little more slowly here. So note first that I have the option to add a single tag, so 1 single tag. I can browse for tags, do the multi-tag add, or add devices. If I click any one of those buttons, this warning message pops up. And what this message is telling me is something very important, and it tells me that if I add even 1 tag for device to a schedule, the entire device is going to be placed into what we call do not scan mode, which means any items for that device will not be scanned unless they're added to a schedule. So whether they're in the schedule or not, it affects the entire tag set for that device. It's important to note because a connected client won't receive any updates from a device in the scheduler where the tags don't exist in the schedule. The one way around this is to use a device's demand pull system tag, and you can write to the system tag, and that would do a demand pull for the device. The help files for this plugin are really in-depth, and if you click help, they'll explain a lot more about this and how scheduling affects your client connections, since it is quite new behavior from that typical OPC-DA or real-time connection. So go ahead and look in the help files if you want more information on that. You can click to say, okay, don't show that warning again because I don't want it popping up every time I add something. Great. So I'm in my Add Devices wizard now. I'm going to click to add a device, and like I said, I'm going to choose Channel 1 Device 1. Then I'm going to click Next, and I have the option to define an address. We can define what we call, maybe a dynamic address, where I'm just typing it in. Maybe it's not a static tag, that I haven't created a tag for it in my Channels and Devices view. I can add that. I can browse for tags, and then I can do the CSV import and export if you're doing like a massive project where you want to configure a lot of tags for multiple devices. And if I just want to point out, if I go back, I can add more devices here. So I have Channel 1 Device 1, but I can add a bunch of different type of devices here if I'd like. So I'm going to browse for tags, and I'm going to go ahead and choose Channel 1 Device 1. Again, right-click, Add All Tags. So I have those tags that are going to be added to my schedule, as well as this dynamic tag that I've defined. And then in my summary window, you see that these are the tags with the full item path that will be added. So if I had multiple devices defined, these tags would be added to the address space of all those devices. And those addresses are validated against the driver. So if you're using, Alan Bradley, and you type in a tag address for Alan Bradley, and then you have another device that's Modbus, that Alan Bradley tag address won't work with the Modbus address space, so it wouldn't be added as a generated tag because the server knows, it validates that, and knows that it's not a valid tag. If for whatever reason you added some tags but they didn't actually get generated, didn't get paired with a device, or you added a device but didn't have any tags that matched up with the device's address space, that would show up here. So that's just a little feedback for the user to let you know if you're creating a massive project with maybe hundreds of devices and tags that you might have missed something there. So once I finish that, I can see there's my 3 tags, and I get the message about my recurrences being scheduled for that device. So that's great. And if I go into my quick client here, you can see now for the schedule 10 seconds, that 1 second rate no longer applies, and I'll have to wait for the 10 seconds to hit to get my data update. So there you go, 10 seconds hit, and I get my data update. So in summary here, the Schedule plugin greatly enhances the control a user has to manage how clients request data from devices, and is especially helpful in limited bandwidth scenarios. Better yet, I was able to set this up with just a few clicks, in under a few minutes, and under maybe 20 minutes just because I was going slow here, and easily begin to kind of intelligently do that data balancing over my network. I do want to show you how the override works. So remember, as the client here, I want to get data every 1 second, but my tags are in a schedule, so for this I only get it every 1 minute. If I want to override that, I can do something called demand pull. So I'm going to add a tag for this device. Under the device system tags, there's this demand pull. So I'm going to add that, and you'll see if I write anything to this, go ahead and write a 1 to it, I'll get an immediate update. So outside of that 1 minute scheduled interval, I can write to this demand tag and get an update. So that's one way you can override the settings here. The other way is with that fast scan or real-time override, we call it. So if I get back into my scheduler, my configuration here, I see that I have a 2-second override. And if I right-click on this device and go Properties, that's how I can push it into real-time override mode. And you can see now I should be getting an update every 2 seconds. So you see this will be every 2 seconds, this timestamp will change instead of the 10-second interval because I'm in a real-time override mode. So that's how that fast scan works. And again, that's for devices that maybe you're trying to troubleshoot something, or they're being maintenance. That real-time override shouldn't be used all the time. Cool. And I do believe, let's look at some of the system tags here. You can see some of the cool system tags that are available, and you can enable devices or enable schedules and disable schedules from here, from the client, by writing these tags. You can set priority from here using these system tags, so that's a nice option for you to do instead of having to do it through the scheduler plugin itself. Great. So the data update again is only going to occur to my client here, to my quick client here, when that schedule interval hits. So when that schedule pull occurs, KEPServerEX is going to update connected clients, and it's only going to update connected clients if a data change has occurred. So you see here there's been no data change for tag 2, and I haven't received an update in a few minutes for that reason. So just to summarize that behavior there. And I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions because I hear a lot of typing, so that's great. I'm going to hold questions till the end of the webinar just to make sure that we have time for some of the other information in this release. To summarize the scheduler, licensing, it is licensed separately from other Kepware products and suites and drivers, and it's call sales for pricing. So just call us if you are interested, and I'll pop up sales email, and I can give you their extension at the end of the webinar. This product has tons of content available for users that would like to learn more. We understand that it's totally new functionality, so you probably have a lot of questions. There's going to be on Friday, there's going to be a much more in-depth tutorial video that will be published on YouTube. That walks through these things a little more slowly. A white paper was written by Kepware's product owner, Aaron Semley, on this, that's available on Kepware.com. And the senior application engineer who's with us, Sam Elsner, has published a 2-part blog series available on our blog. So really great resources if you're trying to learn more and have more questions on this. Well, that's great. I think we're ready to move on to our next subject, which is the support of the FLOWCAL transaction queue for our AFM Exporter. So KEPServerEX, we currently support a collection of drivers that enable companies using flow computers to pull both real-time data and what we call historical or EFM data. The drivers with this functionality that support the following protocols: ADB TotalFlow, Bacharach Plus, and Run Modbus, and OmniFlow Computer. So those are the drivers that we offer with the server for this kind of oil and gas space for the EFM data. So KEPServerEX is also equipped with something we call our AFM Exporter. And what this does is take the gas and liquid archive data that's gathered by those flow computer drivers that I showed previously to export it to measurement accounting software. So maybe a FLOWCAL, you could have PGAS, or maybe you have just like a user configurable CSV or a database that you're using to get this data. And in earlier versions of KEPServerEX, to get files specifically into FLOWCAL, well, and everything else as well, a user would need to store files off first on the local drive or on maybe a network drive. And then FLOWCAL would have to come in and read those files. So specifically for FLOWCAL, they're called CFX files, and a user might have to say, okay, FLOWCAL, you're going to point to this directory, you're going to suck in these CFX files to be able to read those historical data archives. This might be kind of inefficient for FLOWCAL users because you might have thousands of CFX files to administrate, so that might be a little burdensome the way it works. You could envision that having a direct link. So instead of doing that store off to the local system and then upload, like it works currently with everything in our AFM Exporter, having a direct link to the FLOWCAL software would probably be intuitive and helpful. So in a continued collaboration with FLOWCAL, Kepware in this release has that direct link to FLOWCAL analysis software, and that's called the transaction queue. and that's for importing AFM data directly into the Oracle database on which the applications sit. Kepware's AFM customers that are using FLOWCAL now have the flexibility of using that CFX file import or FLOWCAL's transaction queue method. So you can use either or both, depending on how you have things set up. Note that this method of connection does require a 32-bit Oracle Instant Client with the ODBC driver installed on the KEPServerEX machine. So I'm not going to do a demo here because I feel like it's probably a niche audience that I'm talking to on this call that might be using this. But before we move on to the next topic, I do want to do another poll question to see if anybody is actually using on the call using this AFM Exporter functionality. So if you are, we can send you some more information since we're covering it pretty briefly here. So go ahead. Are you currently using the AFM Exporter for KEPServerEX? Yes, you're using it with the CFX files, or you're using another exporter for PGAS database or CSV, or no, maybe they're using another vendor for those archived records, or no, you're not gathering AFM data at all, or you're not sure. So go ahead, I'll leave that poll open for you to vote. A couple more seconds. So keep voting if you have not voted yet. Are you currently using the AFM Exporter? It will be good for us to know if you are, so we can help you out if you need any help. Okay. Thank you for voting there. And I think we're ready to move on. So the last little feature here that I'll talk about is something that we call Aggregates, and that's supported in our local historian plugin. So in the v5.16 release, that's where we released the local historian plugin. And it supported these raw data requests and stored this data off to what we call a data store. So imagine you want to have historized data. You could have maybe a corporate historian that's just reading data from KEPServerEX using an OPC-DA or real-time connection and historizing data. So maybe that's up on this HMI or client level. Or you could have our local historian plugin that's going to store a data store local to the server. And that's convenient if you want to have just a quick little local historized bank of data, so you don't have to connect to your corporate historian to get that data, or you're doing just one-off type projects or lab projects that you'd like the convenience of having a local historian with KEPServerEX. So there's these things called aggregates in the historian. For a huge, maybe you have 10,000 raw data points, you're probably not interested in all those 10,000 data points. Maybe you're just interested in aggregates, like an average of those data points. Or maybe you're interested in interpolating data for those data points. So the idea here, what our enhancement to the local historian is we've added in the support of more of these aggregates. So we calculate the aggregates in the plugin in the server instead of, and thus we don't have to transfer, 10,000 raw data points to any connected client. We can transfer instead maybe 100 points of data that are aggregated data. So the idea is you can save some bandwidth, save the need to transfer a large amount of raw data points, and offload work from the connected client by processing these aggregates and doing these calculations in the historian plugin and KEPServerEX. So hopefully I explained that backstory well. Let me know if you need more information there. So we did support average in the previous release, and now we support these 5 additional aggregates. The most common one that we've seen in industry is the interpolative, which interpolates values where they're not specifically stored. A lot of you will know how to interpolate. And then we have a total, which is kind of like an integral, a minimum and a maximum, which means we find the minimum and maximum value over a specific time and give you the timestamp that min or max occurred. and then a time-weighted average. So those are the new ones that are supported. And that's kind of nice, and I'll just show you our historian plugin real quick. So here I have my local historian. I have some data that I might be historizing, I might be wanting to get data for. So the idea here is that I can use this aggregates to create, instead of, if I have a bunch of raw data, I can do calculations. And I would have to have a connected HDA client to see those aggregates right now. So I don't have any client connected, but just wanted to quickly show you the historian plugin so you have an idea about what I'm talking about. Okay. So besides the aggregates, we do have some other added features to the historian plugin just to make the user experience a little smoother. So we now support CSV import and export of historized tag configurations. We simplified access to physical data store files, how you can get to them and point to them, and automated the data store deletion. So those are just some additional little tweaks that we did for our users. As always, I'm going to end this section with a poll question. So I very briefly explained this and how the historian works. If you're interested in more information on this, please see our local historian tutorial on YouTube. It explains this in much more detail and the reason for local historian and use cases. So I'll go ahead and put this poll question up. So if you could answer this for me, are you interested in pulling historical data? So just interested to see who on the call is actually interested in this type of functionality. And the answers are yes, no, or unsure, so it's a simple question. I'll give you a few more seconds to answer that poll question. So please vote. Okay, so if you're interested, please vote quickly before I close this poll. All right, and here's the results. So it looks like over 50% on the call interested in historizing data, so that's great. And a few people unsure. So for the people that are interested, we can definitely send you more info if you want to learn more. So that's great. Okay, so let's just conclude this here. Another poll question, of course, to conclude the webinar. We have some great new functionality, and we're interested to know if you're interested in, if you're actually going to use any of these features. So this is great feedback for us, lets us understand who our audience is, and as well as, you know, if we're on the right path with our releases and if we're doing the right thing. So great chance for you guys to give us some feedback on if we're headed in the right direction. So go ahead. Will you use the new features in KEPServerEX version 5.17? Yes, you're going to use the scheduler plugin. This is multiple answers, so you can choose multiple. Yes, the AFM Exporter transaction queue for FLOWCAL. Yes, new aggregates for local historian. Yes, maybe the new soft PLC model. Maybe that's something you're interested in. Or no, you will not use these features at this time. Unfortunately, in GoToWebinar, there's only spots for 5 answers, or I would have included like an unsure or something. So you can just not answer if you're not going to use anything, if you're not sure. So go ahead and vote. What are you going to use? And you can select multiple. Are you going to use any of these features that we just covered? Now let this stay open for a few more seconds, so vote if you haven't voted yet. So go ahead. Are you going to use these new features or not? Okay. So I'll share the results with you. So this is great. This is encouraging. Looks like almost 60% on the call interested in using new scheduler plugins. So that's great. It's good to know that this big new piece of functionality we have will be of use. We got 20% interested in the transaction queue, so that's good as well as a good chunk of people interested in historian as well as a soft PLC. So really good to see. Thanks for your interest, and that's good to know. So we will be kind of doing targeted follow-ups with you based on what you're interested in, so that you're not getting info about something that maybe you don't care about. All right, so summary, we have new scheduler plugin, FLOWCAL transaction queue, enhanced aggregate support, that new device model, soft PLC, as well as, I mentioned these briefly in the beginning, more robust security for DNP3 master Ethernet, and support for firmware versions 23 and 24 for Allen-Bradley control logics. So tons of new functionality packed into this release. Because the scheduler plugin is such new functionality, we are offering pre-sale support. So just call technical support if you're going to be using a scheduler plugin, and before you even start configuring it, you can call us up and we will help you and give you tips and pointers. Again, it's call for pricing on the scheduler plugin. You can call our sales team and the phone number listed below, extension 208, and they will help you out, get you set up. And again, they'll talk to you about that pre-sale support we're offering so that you can get set up with the scheduler and configure it correctly right off the bat, and we can help you, kind of guide you through setting that up. So that's a great option. It's the first time we've kind of offered that. And we always offer pretty good support. We have an amazing support team, but definitely for the scheduler plugin, we want to make sure you get started off on the right foot. As always, you can contact me directly, me or Kylie, at training@kepware.com, or the rest of the training team, as well as if you want more training, go to our YouTube page, or if you want to learn about more of these webinars and stay up to date, follow us on LinkedIn. We have the Kepware product training page that we post all our updates on, as well as you can request training. We have a training request form on the Kepware website. Thank you for your time. I will, stay on the line for some questions if there's some additional questions now. But that concludes, this feature tour of 517. And like I said, definitely call sales or technical support if you need additional information. And visit Kepware.com. You get a free, fully functional product demo for that, or trial. So thank you, and I will now stay on the line to see if there's any questions here that are kind of hanging out. So it looks like there's a Bobby that's asking, SQL versus CSV, does it do exporting and buffering data to SQL? So I don't have to have another server to store the data using a new database. Now I'm assuming that means for our AFM Exporter, and I believe, Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, that our AFM Exporter does not support buffering in any way to like SQL, like a store and forward.
No, it doesn't support buffering, but it supports writing out to databases via ODBC. So SQL is supported as an exporter.
Okay, great. That's good. So a question from Mike, great question. What is the difference between the local historian plugin that you have and products that are like Rockwell or GE's historian? So very good question from Mike. Rockwell and GE and the big historians, they make, enterprise historians, corporate historians that are just really, consuming tons of data from maybe a bunch of different sites or something, tons of different devices. We can do that too, but the idea here is that instead of on that corporate level where you have a huge massive system getting data from, thousands or hundreds of thousands of sources, this is maybe something that's just local to one instance of KEPServerEX. So that's why we call it the local historian, because what you can do is, maybe you don't want to connect to that corporate historian and view data that way. Maybe you just want to be on your own system, on your server machine, and have KEPServerEX historize some data for you so that you can pull it up quickly and use like a light historian HDA client to just view the data very quickly, view some historized information, view some trends, and very simply just see what's going on with that local system instead of having to filter through all that information, maybe like a corporate historian, like those other ones that you mentioned, Mike. So good question there. Again, video on YouTube discusses kind of those use cases for the historian. It's discussed in our 5.16 release webinar, if you want to watch that webinar, as well as there is the local historian plugin overview video, and this is only 10 minutes long, so not too meaty there, so you can get some more information. So good question from Brian. Will the PowerPoint be sent out to attendees? The PDF will be sent out to attendees, so you can see all these slides as well as the recording, not only to attendees but also to people who register. So for future reference, if you want to get our webinar information, but maybe the time doesn't work for you, you can still register and we'll still send you a follow-up email with the recording and the PDF of the presentation. So question from Rick. We have micrologics at some facilities and are using FLOWCAL. Will we have to purchase a soft PLC? No, Rick, you wouldn't have to do that. This soft PLC is just an option for you. If you would like to go in that direction and use their hardware, but it definitely, and I believe soft PLC is for different models. That's the PLC 5s and the SLIX 5s. It's not for those micrologics. So you definitely aren't obligated to go in any one direction. Here at Kepware, we definitely pride ourselves on being vendor neutral. So it's up to you really what you want to do with your hardware. Okay, question from Roy. What is the difference between this version and previous versions for the IDF? So IDF is another plugin that we have that we actually didn't discuss today, and that is what we call the internal data forwarder, and that's for something software that we work with, Internet of Things software called Splunk. And if anything was touched in IDF for this version, I'm not aware of it. No major updates were made to that plugin in my understanding. Great. So if you missed any part of this presentation, like I said again, this will all be sent out. Also will be posted publicly on our YouTube channel. So if for whatever reason the email hits your spam folder or you don't get it, you can either just contact us at training@kepware.com and we'll resend it to you, or it'll be on the YouTube page and you can get it. So for Ollie, I believe, asking about ABB Aquamaster flow meters. Is there any way to gather these data with KEPServerEX now or in the future? So I'm hearing interesting application from Sam Elsner. We don't have any support for SMS messaging. Okay, so I don't see any other questions coming through, and it looks like most of these questions were answered by our applications engineers. So hopefully everybody got their questions answered, and thank you very much for attending. We love your feedback and participation. We'll definitely be following up with you with some custom information for what you're interested in. And I would love to send all of you some lobster and some clam chowder. Someone's asking for some clam chowder, but I don't think that travels well, but maybe. I think there's actually websites where you can order lobster and clam chowder. I've actually sent those as presents to my family. So if you have, of course, you can visit Maine. We have a class here once monthly if you want to come visit us and get that yourself, Mike. Okay, so thank you so much. Hopefully we answered your questions. If for whatever reason we missed your question, we'll circle back with you and try to contact you individually. And you can always contact us, training@kepware.com, sales@kepware.com, or any technical support. Any of those emails will work. Great. All right, so thank you so much. Thank you for joining, and we will see you again next time we release in another few months. Bye.